Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to What Do You Say Anime. I am your host, Peter. On today's episode, I will be going over, not we this time, my top 10 most underrated and most underwatched shows of the 2020 so far. Have to add that caveat because we're going to be going over some shows that are popular and are highly rated that will be on this list. So, kind of why I wanted to do this episode was 5-6 years ago back. When I first started this channel, this podcast, I did a top anime of the decade looking at the 2010s and sort of went over like the top influencing shows of that, the highest rated, most popular, and sort of compiled a list of my top 30 shows of the decade. And now I'm looking at the calendar now and we're already halfway through. Man, I was like, damn, time flies when you're having fun. So, sort of like what I wanted to do in this episode is go over some of my hidden gems, some of the shows that I feel like should be more popular and more talked about throughout this decade, because when we look back at this decade that it was, I feel like these shows should be included in some way, whether it's based off of their demographic or their genre or their influence or just a bunch of different things that goes into these shows. Why I feel that these shows are viewed as either underrated or underwatched. So I use my anime list as sort of an idea of like where people are viewing shows, whether it's based off total members of those shows or like where the show is ranked. And so I have an idea of sort of like where I can put these shows. So just for preference, I'm just going to use a show from this year that was very popular and where it stands in terms of ratings and members, and that's Dandadan. It's currently sitting at 8.52 with 772,000 members. So with a property like that, you can sort of compare and contrast with some of the shows that I'm picking, and you can see why maybe I view it as underrated or underviewed based off of those like metrics. So that's kind of like what I'm using. Not all these shows, maybe some of them are going to be pushing like what I think is underrated and underwatched, but I just wanted to have a chance to talk about them. But also maybe we have different preferences on like what we think is underrated and underwatched. So obviously this is all going to be personal and just having fun with what I think is underrated and underwatched. But would love to hear, if you are listening, what your most underrated or underwatched shows of the 2020s are so far. You can do that in our YouTube comments. You can do that in our Spotify comments or our Discord. Links to that in the description below. But yeah, let me know what you think and your justifications on why you view that, and I will do the same with mine. So let's get started here at number 10. Number 10 starts off with, and like I said, we're going to be talking all genres, all demographics. A bunch of shows are going to be listed here. They'd be like, huh? Yep. So first one up is Handyman in Another World, or Handyman Saito. It aired in winter 2023. It has a 7.37 on MAL with 203,000 members. This show is fun, and why I view it as underrated is because it takes this isekai approach to a show where we get a lot of power fantasies, we get a lot of fan service, we get a lot of different elements that we see in isekai that I think is nuanced and can be overplayed. But with Handyman Saito, what it does is it takes it and makes it just like a silly, goofy show about being literally a handyman in another world. So what that means is he's good at fixing like day-to-day tasks around like a house. So if something's like if a lock is broken, he's the guy that you call. If a ceiling roof is leaking, he's the guy that you call. He's sort of like a jack of all trades when it comes to this style of being a hero in another world, and he uses this sort of silliness and skill set that he used from his outside world to defeat the task that he has at hand inside of like this fantasy dungeon crawler-esque world. And what makes it so fun is that the main character himself is more viewed as a support than as like an overpowered protagonist, which I think is not done too often in isekais, where you have a character that is viewed as maybe not the strongest, and then when he's actually put into the team role, he plays those roles. It's not just out of nowhere he gets really strong and then becomes like this overpowered dude. No, he's just the support character of their team. And I think that's something to take away why I liked it so much, is that we're differing from traditional stories, but can still make the concept of what it's trying to do relatable and fun for the viewer to watch. So it's one thing that I absolutely adored with Handyman Saito. It's just a show where you can just sit down and have fun in this world while still sort of having the elements of danger with like combat and dungeon crawling that maybe you would see something similar to like a Dungeon Meshi, where yes, they're dungeon crawling, but like the gourmet aspect of Dungeon Meshi is sort of the fun and prevalent one of the fun and prevalent themes of that story. Handyman Saito does something similar with using his skill sets as being a handyman to solve fantasy style related issues. And the cast itself is just thoroughly enjoyable. It does, I would say the comedy is more towards the side of Konosuba. So if you are not a fan of it's significantly less raunchy and etchy than Konosuba, I'll say it that way, but I would say it's more in the adolescent type of humor in terms of comedy, which is a style that I am a fan of, but not going to be for everyone, which is kind of why I think it's the rating that it is. But if you do find that style of comedy enjoyable, this is a show that cannot be skipped. It is one of my favorite isekais of all time. I would say it's also one of those shows where I really wish they continue with the anime because the manga is 4 Koma and it's not as good as how the anime treats the property. I think it's a much better anime, but it's just a show that if you were looking to get into isekai and you want something more along the lines of fun and enjoyable with something like Dungeon Meshi, I would definitely highly recommend watching something like Handyman in Another World. Number 9, moving on to a show that aired in spring 2024, and that is Yatagarasu. This was a show at the time of recording an 8.06 on Mal with 52,000 members. It's Game of Thrones, the anime. So if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, you should probably watch Yatagarasu. It's styled in a fantasy setting sort of similar to that, where we do have the human drama elements of like a political intrigue for 90-ish% of the show. However, there is that fantasy element that you see in Game of Thrones with like stuff to like the dire wolf and the dragons and stuff like that. We get this with sort of like the raven consorts that we have in this show with this clan that they're a part of. It is a show that is centered around the prince slash king of this Chinese styled mystery land. There's some spoilers I'm not going to get into that makes it a little bit more mystical than it seems. And if you are getting into a style of show like this where it's Game of Thrones or buying over land and war and who's going to marry who for what reason, this is the type of show that just like knocks it out of the ballpark. Like there's not many Game of Thrones style shows in anime, and Yatagarasu being one of them, I think definitely needs more eyes on the product. I do think that this show is both underrated and underwatched. It had 2 of the best cliffhangers of 2024, 2 of the best episodes of 2024. Had my best boy of the year in the show. It is just a well-structured political drama with that hint of fantasy that if you like it, if with like I mentioned Game of Thrones, there's also like Raven of the Inner Palace, a show that also dives heavy into political drama and drama in general while still having this fantasy style behind the core of its cast and characters, is definitely something to watch. And I definitely recommend it to everybody who is looking for something 2 core or more and a deep and endearing story that has been one of the best of the decade. And it's a show that I know that everyone in the Discord is a big fan of. So if you're a fan of Yatagarasu and want to talk anime with us, you could join the Discord. But this is one of those shows I feel like for the heavy seasonal watchers, you've all seen it. But to the casual watchers, maybe they've missed it. And it's something that you need to put on your radar because it definitely is one of the most underlooked shows of this decade so far. Number 8, a show from summer 2023 is Undead Girl Murder Farce. At the time of recording, a 7.86 with 171,000 members. With this show, I think a lot of people looked at it and were either didn't like the aesthetic, but it wasn't as popular as I thought it was going to be with sort of the elements that they laid out to begin with a show that included prominent fictional like mystery characters like Aleister Crowley, Frankenstein, Sherlock Holmes. I don't know if people understood sort of like the mystery of what this show was going for. So the main character is immortal and she only has her head, and her head is trapped in a bird cage sort of so they could carry around her head, and she is searching for her body. She has like a caretaker that travels with her. She meets up with a character who is a Oni, who is like a half demon, half man. He's skilled in like hand to hand combat. And so these two are sort of go off on a mystery together to get back her body. The main character, Sugaru, has his reasons for going along with it as well. But the main course is like Aya, the main character, is trying to get her body back. So it's a story that like interweaves under other stories with the underlying mystery of trying to get her body back. So they're trying while they are looking for Aya's body, other mysteries come popping up like like a Sherlock Holmes style show that you would watch, and things progress with inside of this mystery, along with it being an urban fantasy element of including other members of different literature to include in the mystery. The cast itself is just what sells it. Like the two main leads, Suru and Aya, are a whole lot of fun. Their personalities mesh really well together. And along with that, the mystery at the core of this show was a lot of fun. If you are a fan of something like Knives Out, I would definitely check out Undead Girl Murder Farce. If you're a fan of mysteries in general, I would definitely check this out. Along with the cast and the mystery being really good, it had my favorite OP of the year. Big fan of the music that goes along with Undead Girl Murder Farce. And yeah, if you are interested in like urban fantasy, this is one of the best shows that I've seen that does it. So highly recommend Undergirl Murder Farce. That is my number 8. Number 7. Oh my god, this is a show that I could not stop ranting about. Last year aired fall 2024. It has a 6.88 and only 8,000 members. Nobody has watched this show. I think it's fantastic, and that's Mushroom Pup. One of my favorite Iyashikis of all time, one of my favorite slice of lifes, and it just deals with what losing a pet and having a pet means to people. And this is coming from somebody who doesn't own a pet, and I felt what it presented in the show so much that I had to talk about it. It really does show you how having I guess in this case, since it's mostly in the show, I'll just use dogs as reference since it's a mushroom pup. How much dogs can like mean to a family. Like it is a family member, and sort of the good and the bads of having a limited time with something like a dog, and how it changes, or just how it's viewed versus, having like a lasting relationship with a friend, and just sort of like what that brings to the table and the good times and the bad of being a pet owner. And I felt that like I thoroughly enjoyed sort of what a companion brings to somebody's life, and showcasing that in the manner that I did in the show was wonderful. Like it in the first couple episodes, it is about the grievance of losing a pet, but then sort of afterwards with the introduction to the mushroom pups, you sort of understand why they are there in the first place, and sort of the understanding of what it means to be a pet owner, and then what it means to like thoroughly and unconditionally loving another pet or companion or whatever you want to call it in this show. And that's what it does, and it's just so much fun. Like it is a blast. Like it is an Iyashiki, and it is healing, and I do feel like 95% of the time it is about the hijinks. But like what the show does so well is sort of understanding the theme of what a pet is to a human, really just showcases it through the entire show. The highs and the lows, but mostly the highs. Like I feel like that's like when you get out of the training zone of a pet, just the unconditional love something can bring to your life is just unmatched. And that's what Mushroom Pup is. Like that's the whole point of the show. So this goes out to all my slice of life fans, all my Iyashiki fans, all my friends who are pet owners, and love pets, and anything along those lines, it is a absolute must watch. I absolutely adore Mushroom Pup. That was my number 7. Number 6, this was a show that we did it on Watch Club, and I was kind of shocked by people's thoughts on it because this was a show that I just gravitated towards, and that's Uku. It was unlike any story I've watched in anime. Like, I love it when shows do something completely different than other shows. Like, there's no show that is like Uku. So the setting is the Uku are in most cases in traditional settings, they are like prospected brides for the emperor, and the thing that I think in normal cases is around 100. So if I'm wrong in the numbers, just hopefully you understand like the premise of what I'm going for. In Uku, the roles are reversed. So the emperor is a woman, and sort of these, I don't know if they're like concubines, but like sort of like the people in waiting are dudes. So how does the dynamic switch when it's the women in power versus the men? And that's what I fell in love with Uku. This is a show that has a 7.41 and 29,000 members. It is, I know the manga is dearly loved, but in this case, I'm just speaking about the anime. I loved how it was formatted. I think how they structured it with the different emperors in the show was done very well, and I think it kind of understood the premise of the changes that you see in empresses throughout generations, just like you would with an emperor, and sort of seeing the changes in culture and whether it's lack of respect or more respect towards the people that are like less in power, and just sort of seeing the understandings of what an I feel like what an empress, a female emperor, there we go, would be. And that's like, from romance to drama to war to like the political everything that goes within the Uku was just handled so well. Like, it was a show that I could not stop watching. I wish it had more episodes because it was just such unlike anything that I've watched in anime. And I feel like if you wanted to, you could nitpick and deep dive into some of the production issues that went along with this show. It wasn't like the most animated, but like, or best well animated, but I still feel like with like the characters and how they were portraying it is what the main focal point of the show should be. And I thought they nailed they hit it on the head. Like, it was a 10 out of 10 in terms of casting, voice acting work, dialogue, character dynamics. I just fell in love with what they were doing with Uku. So for 2023, it was my number 4 show of the year. I had it higher rated than JJK season 2. I had it higher rated than Skip and Loafer, which are shows that I absolutely adore. It's just so unique. And I feel like this is a show that needs to be watched or read. I'm assuming the manga is significantly better just based off of ratings and what my friends have said who have read it. But I think it's just like whether you watch the anime, I just think Uku is a story that needs to be consumed in some way so you have the understanding of what the show is going for, because it's just so good in terms of how they deal with the gender swapping ideologies within the Uku. So absolutely adore it. Number 6 goes to Uku. Number 5 is it's a top 5 slice of life for me of all time. And this is especially if you have a good relationship with like a brother or a sibling, I would say more towards a brother just because of how the show is structured. And that is the Yuzuki family's 4 sons. It is a story that takes place where the mother and father of this family pass away, and now the oldest brother, who is like post college grad and is a salary man, is now taking the role of parent for his 3 younger brothers. So we have one in high school, one in middle school, and one in elementary school, if I recall correctly. And sort of just the dynamic of being brothers. I have 2 brothers myself, so that's why something like this show I think resonated with me so well, where I'm the middle child. And so I see the viewpoints of the older and the younger brothers through the lens how the show like shows it, but also with being the middle brother, how you portray, you're not quite the baby and get spoiled by mom, but you're also not quite the responsible one, like the older brother gets sort of tasked with, and not just the show, but in life in general. I feel like the older brother is always, viewed as, or the older sibling is always viewed as the responsible one and the one they look up to the most. So it's a story that like goes throughout their school and work life and just managing being a family in the circumstances that you had, because like I had something similar where I had the family dynamic of our whatever changed, and like it was, the brothers took on a much bigger role, and that's what happened in my family, and that's what sort of happens in this show. So it's a show that I personally relate to a lot. But that being said, I think a lot of people can find a bunch of different things that they can like about it. The youngest is, really good soul. Gakuto, it was probably my favorite boy. But you see like sort of the upcomings and bringings of four different generations of a dude's life, being carefree and in preschool and just having fun with your friends. You have the elementary student who is sort of going through, maybe liking a girl and not understanding your feelings well. I guess that's the middle school brother. And then the high school brother sort of being calm, cool, and collective, sort of having his stuff figured out a little bit more as you get older. And then the oldest brother himself being the salary man sort of takes this whole, you have four different dynamics of four different characters going on at the same time. It's honestly just an incredible slice of life to watch. I think it's like my number 5 slice of life of all time. And just how it deals with family dynamics is, you don't really see it that much in anime. And by that I mean like full family dynamic of day-to-day life. Like we have snippets of, of them having dinner or going on vacation. Like we have snippets of that in shows, but with Yuzuki family, it is the entire time. So I think that's just a fun, different, unique way of taking on a family dynamic role of a slice of life and incorporating it into a 22-minute episode. So love this, absolutely adore it. Check out Yuzuki Family's For Son. And that was a show that has a 7.88 on Mal with 67,000 members. All right, we're down to our top 4. Here we go. Number 4 is Sunny Boy. I think I know the reason why Sunny Boy is not as prevalent and popular in the general sphere in terms of, well, let me preface it this way. It is popular. A lot of people have watched it, but the main thing that's focusing on is its 7.82 rating. And that's because the show is very complicated. Like it is very confusing. There's a lot of points going on during the show where it took me until a full conversation on Watch Club to go over for an hour and a half to truly understand what Sunny Boy is doing. And once you get a better understanding of what the show is, this is a show that's going to be looked back for years, like 20 years from now. People are going to look back at Sunny Boy and talk about the things that it did because it is so well done. It just can be a little confusing to understand that concept. So if you're a fan of Fooly Cooly, Sunny Boy is essentially, if not all, a story of puberty or coming to that adulthood stage of your life in this whimsical formatting of drift, like a school drifting on the ocean. And I think that's where it can get a little confusing because there are a lot of messages that are being sent in this show. You see it with somebody like Raj, who is going through an existential crisis with who he is as a person, and then sort of coming to terms of that towards the end of his character arc was also like a fantastic like thing that they did in the show. But it's understanding like the core theme of Sunny Boy, where it gets a lot. And so if you want to hear a better breakdown, we've done a Watch Club episode of Sunny Boy. But it's a show that you need to, when you start it, you need to put your phone away, like very far away, and you need to be paying attention to every single detail in the show. And with a TikTok generation, that can be hard to do and hard to consume. So I get it in that sense, but it has some of the best like cinematography in anime. Like I referenced it. I did a panel at my convention sort of talking about generational things in anime and how different shows incorporate direction differently that can make it super influential and be used for techniques for years to come. You saw that in something like Bocchi the Rock and how they adapted a four koma manga into what that show is. It, to me, is generational. Like it is completely changed how you can sort of format four comas into something pristine. Sunny Boy also did that. And in terms of its layering in visual metaphors and formatting. And it's hard to say it in terms of wording, but when you watch the show for Sunny Boy, a lot of the things that they're doing is visually represented. The big one for this is the monkey baseball episode, which you want a better breakdown, check out our watch club and stuff like that. But like it's using these visual elements. Like there is a reason why they are monkeys playing baseball and not, humans. Like there's all a specific reason for how they are laying out this show. And to me, that's what makes Sunny Boy something so special that everything has a deeper meaning to it. If you want to look into it more, it's there. Even if you do not want to, the show itself is still fantastic. And I think that's what sets it apart from other avant-garde shows where if you don't understand the message that it's trying to send, it can get confusing and maybe you don't like it. I know I've done that for various avant-garde shows, specifically like Kill la Kill is something that I don't personally how they formatted like the meaning. I wasn't a big fan, and because of that, my entertainment was a little ruined. Sunny Boy, I feel like is a show where even if you don't necessarily understand the imaging and messaging of the shows as much, it is still a compelling and deep and entertaining watch throughout. So can't say its praises high enough. I adore Sunny Boy. It is my number 4. Moving on to number 3. I feel like just 2023 and 2024 just had like really solid seasons. So the majority of these my shows are from those 2 years. But to add to it is Dead Dead Demons Destruction from summer 2024, 7.93 on Mouth, 56,000 members. No idea why this show didn't blow up. It is goofy. It is fun. The cast is incredible. Oran is such a fantastic lead. The show has a bunch of different elements that are at a very high level. The intrigue of the sci-fi elements were next level to me. I thought Madhouse killed it with the animations. It reminded me of a lot of something like when Production IG did Heavenly Delusion, where we had incredible background work. When things need to be highly animated, they were. And there was really to me, nothing that like was hindering of Dead Dead Demons. This show was an incredible look at immigration in Japan, which is a topic that is very sensitive because of how homogeneous Japan is, it being the most homogeneous developed country in the world, and sort of portraying the idea of portraying aliens as immigrants, which is oftentimes they are referred to as aliens. I just thought was handled so well. They're not the first show that has done that specific metaphor, but I think it did it the best, at least in terms of anime, of highlighting how people are easily scared by something different. The idea of, someone who doesn't look like me coming into the job force, coming into the community, and sort of having that initial fear of sort of how, like, at least I would also like to get people's ideas on this because, like, I like watching and listening to like Japanese interviews on the street and how they view people coming into like Japan, especially as somebody who has visited twice, just like how people live there view foreigners in general. Because I guess to me, it's something like if I didn't feel comfortable, I wouldn't want to go there. And Japan is like a country where they're like, oh yes, personal, everybody has their own, but like personally, when I watch those videos, a lot of the times I get the vibe of, oh yes, like we love different cultures and we love seeing people come here from different parts of the world, but it's like when they want to get integrated into their society, that's the issue. It's like they love it when foreigners visit, they don't love it when foreigners live there. And so seeing how I kind of view it from like those interviews and then seeing it put into anime with the show is like the perfect like putting apples together where you say one thing and then you do the other. And it's not like that for every person, but you know, you see how, and especially in America, we see this with like people who go to demonstrations who don't want immigrants in their country because they're scared or whatever they were fed to them. And like you don't view them as humans. And I think that's kind of like the big point of what Dead Dead Demons is that we're all human, we all bleed the same blood, and you viewing somebody different because their skin is brown is like it is as simple as that, but like how it's portrayed in Dead Dead Demons, I think a lot of people like completely missed like that was sort of the point of the show. I think a lot of people just saw like, oh, cool alien action, but like it is a commentary on immigration in Japan. Like you can't tell me otherwise. Just an immaculate show that will make you laugh. It'll make you cry. I mean, I'm speaking so like I'm talking really passionate about like that one specific thing, just because it's while there are other elements, there's just not many shows that do that. Like, how many shows talk about immigration in Japan? Like, I don't know. You have something like Gate, which is more like imperialized immigration in terms of like, I guess that's more of like we're immigrating on you. Japan's immigrating on you rather than the opposite way. But man, it is a show that I adore. I absolutely adore Dead Dead Demons. One of the best shows from last year. It was my number 2 from last year. And it's just a full complete story of, you know, girls finding their way along with everybody trying to find their way in this story. So love Dead Dead Demons. My number 3. My number 2 most underrated / underwatched shows of the past decade is my 2021 anime of the year, and that is Kageki Shoujo. It has my favorite female character ever in Sarasa, which is going to be heavily influenced of why I think the show is great. I think how Sarasa carries the show, but when you have an incredible cast like Kageki Shoujo, along with an incredible main lead like Sarasa, it's just a recipe for pure success. I thought the drama elements in the show were near perfect. It wasn't heavy. It is the chase your dream style of drama with roadblocks in the story that I think any person would endure in this type of show, along with just having different side plots to each individual, I would say, main character story. So while Sarasa and I are the main characters of the show, and we see Ai's issues with her being a former idol and having some issues with male fans in the past, and her issue, I'm not going to call them issues, but like her problems that she has with the opposite sex, and then Sarasa sort of being this driving force of everything you want in a main character in this style of show was so refreshing. We get different cast members and sort of their side plots as well. Something like Karu with her baseball love story back at home. One of the teachers we get a little mix of, but it's all competing to be in this theater group for all women, playing all roles in Sarasa trying to be Lady Oscar, which is fitting, doing that being the Rose of Versailles movie that just came out. But it's just the perfect light drama for me. Like, I watched this, and as soon as it finished, I bought, I got all the manga here. I even have 2 copies of Volume 5. So if everyone needs a copy of Volume 5, let me know. But I mean, it's just the perfect light drama show. Like, straight up, if you're a fan of something like Review Starlight or Sound Euphonium these drama shows with like a entertainment aspect to it, whether it's music or acting or sports, something along those lines. Kageki Shoujo is that for me. Like it is everything I wanted in a show that is a fully developed cast with characters that I just absolutely fell in love with. Yeah, number 2, Kageki Shoujo. And we've made it to the end. This is going to be a quick episode. I didn't think it was going to be super long, but if you guys like these style of episodes, let me know. I'm thinking about maybe doing an overrated one. Not entirely sure yet, but that just might be give me an excuse to shit on like Mushoku Tensei for an hour, but we'll see. I don't necessarily like negatively talking about a lot of shows, but I do think that there are some shows out there that are kind of overrated. So we'll see if we get to that. But my number 1 underrated show of the 2020s, it was my 2023 anime of the year. It is a show that I think is just absolutely brilliant. And it's a show that has a good rating, but I think for why I'm putting it on this list, it has an 8.45. So it's a pretty highly rated show, but only 215,000 members. And that's why I included it in like the underwatch, because of what this show presents is something that I think hits a lot of people. And that's Pluto. It is, outside of Frieren, the best show of the 2020s, in my opinion. It is perfect on so many different levels. Like having a full series. I mean, it's the beginning of Astro Boy. So like Astro Boy, the most influential property period for anime and manga, is sort of the start of what Astro Boy is in Pluto. And it's one of those shows where even if you don't know who Astro Boy is or like what he does, it's still a great way to get introduced to what Astro Boy is, along with incorporating a story that is so prevalent in today's news with the Palestine-Israeli war that is happening right now. Like that is heavily shown in Pluto. I think it's very important to address stuff like that. AI is a huge topic in this show. It shows some of the positives and negatives that AI in the future could or could not do. And we living in a world where people are so accustomed to ChatGPT and using AI for a bunch of reasons that it's super unnecessary to use it for. How does a world look, let's say 100 years from now, where our police officers are AI, our firefighters are AI, these servants of humanity are now AI? And I just think how it's handled in the story is incredible. The humility of a robot, the wherewithal of a robot. Can AI understand empathy? Stuff like that is all included into Pluto. It's so much more than just that, but it is a story to me that I don't know how it only has 215,000 members. It's crazy. It should be on the levels of JJK, these like really popular Western, because there's a lot of action in Pluto. There's a lot of fights. There's a lot of intrigue into the darkness and despair that technology can bring to us that resonates with a lot of people that you see in really popular shows like Cyberpunk. Like if you watch Cyberpunk Edge Runners, you should watch Pluto. It has a lot of the elements that show does, but I think it does it better. Like as much as I love Cyberpunk, Pluto is just my number 2 show of the decade, 2 or 3. It is absolutely incredible stuff to watch though. Yeah, I think that concludes sort of my list. I knew this wasn't going to be as long of an episode, but I was inspired by ProZD doing like his videos. If you know who he is, he's the voice actor for Senshi and Delicious in Dungeons in the English sub. He also does a bunch of like video game stuff, and he's a voice actor in various different things. But he does like this thing where he does like his top 10, slice of life, Kyoto animation, romance, and stuff like that. And I like making lists. Obviously, I have a top 100 and talking about why I put these shows in those lists and some reason why. A lot of them are more personal and like what I vibe to. So if you vibe to me, hopefully you enjoy the shows that I included on this list. Nothing is like concrete and like a fact, but these are the shows that I feel like need to be talked about more, need to be highly rated for the reasons why I gave them. Some of them are, I think, fact based, some of them are more personal based, but yeah, I mean, I love these shows. Just to recap it real quick, Handyman Saito was number 10, Yatagarasi was 9, Undead Girl Murder Farce was 8, Mushroom Putt was 7, Uku was 6, the Yuzuki family is 4 sons, and the 4 sons were 5. Sunny Boy was 4, Dead Dead Demons was 3, Takiki Shoujo was 2, and then number 1 was Pluto. So I'd love to hear your guys' most underrated / underwatched shows of the decade so far. Why you would include them in this. There were shows that I left off, like honorable mention. Something like Vivi, I think is underrated in the sense that it is one of the best animated shows of the decade, and some people bring it up, but a lot of times I think like something like Demon Slayer and Jujutsu Kaisen get included way more than Vivi does in terms of animation, where that show is one of, if not the best animated shows of 2020. It is, but like it's rated, it's like an 8.4 on Mal. I think that's good. It has like 400,000 members. I think that's pretty good as well. So I didn't include it in like my underrated or underwatch. Other honorable mentions I want to mention, Police in a Box. That was a very underrated show, especially if someone's looking for an adult cast in a show. Police in a Box was full adult cast, pretty funny, had some drama elements with it, with, you know, just being a police officer, you get involved in some things that you probably don't want to be involved in. So there's that. And then the other mention I want to shout out was a show called Slow Loop. Takes place in the Bocchi universe, fun fact. But that is a show that I also think is both underrated and underwatched in terms of slice of life and Iyashiki, and that's more with grief of losing a parent. Sort of like moving on from that aspect. Like, how do you move on? Because everybody moves on in their own way. I just think how that show represents grief in the manner of like cute girls doing cute things is handled really well. So that's another show that I wanted to like give an honorable mention to, just because I love it. And like I think I mentioned it earlier, 2025 is probably going to have some shows that I think are underwatched and underrated, but I think it's too early to tell with those shows. So maybe when hopefully the podcast is around in another 5 years, I can look back at 2025 and go over some of those shows. Something like Metalist with only 62,000 members screams highly underwatched, and it's one of the best dramas of the year. So like that's like another honorable mention that I wanted to give a shout out for. So yeah, that is the end. Let me know what you think. Whether you agree with me, don't agree with me, your thoughts, let me know in the comments, let me know in the Discord, let me know in the Spotify comments. If you want to support us, the best way to do so, like, comment, subscribe, leave a review on whatever platform you are watching or listening to us on. Next week for Watch Club, we will be doing Spirited Away, our second Ghibli. I had to remember which one we were doing. So really looking forward to talking about my favorite Ghibli of all time. Otherwise, in 2 weeks of a year for non-Watch Club stuff, something will be dropping. So thanks, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye bye.